Near mint condition, the home of collected editions. Oh my gosh, look at that panel of Batman. You have the absolute, you have the deluxe. DC Comics firing on all cylinders. How's it going, everybody? This is the Uncanny Omar from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for my overview of the Suicide Squad by John Ostrander Omnibus Volume 1. One of my most wanted Omnis is finally here in my hands. So we're going to be taking a look at this together. And welcome back, everybody. So yes, one of my most anticipated Omnis of the year is finally here, Volume 1, and I hope we get all 3 volumes sometime soon. So we are looking at Suicide Squad by John Ostrander Omnibus Volume 1. If you're thinking, wait a second, did I already see a Suicide Squad Omni review on your channel? Yes, that was the New 52 era. This is the classic stuff. Well, the stuff I grew up with, I know there's the classic Silver Age stuff, but this is the stuff that happens post-Crisis on Infinite Earths. So here's the spine, Suicide Squad by John Ostrander, Omnibus Volume 1. You also have Luke McDonald and Bob Lewis and Carl Gafford there. The spine here kind of reminds me a little bit of the design here for the Secret Six, which in a way is kind of the successor to Suicide Squad when this happened post-Infinite Crisis. But that's a story for another day. We're still waiting on that Volume 2 of that. But let's shift the focus back to this. Here we have, actually, this is kind of like the early lineup, like Bronze Tiger, Plastique, and Enchantress, Captain Boomerang, Blockbuster, and Mind Boggler, and of course Rick Flag with Deadshot there. And then the back of the book here, with some of the characters again that were on the spine, like Bronze Tiger, Plastique, and Captain Boomerang, Blockbuster, Slipknot, Mind Boggler, and then Deadshot and Enchantress. The ISBN down there with the retail price of $125. I really like this design, wanted right here. And what's pretty cool, or at least I think is cool, underneath the dust jacket, actually, let's look at the flaps first. Here we have a little bit of the characters on the left-hand side again, and then the bio on the different creators over here, including some of the ones that we've mentioned, but also Carl Kessel and Todd Klein. Underneath the dust jacket, I think it's pretty cool. There is blood splattered with bullet holes on the same image. And it goes across right here. And one of the things you'll notice is, I'm sure that was asked by James Gunn to go ahead and put a bullet hole through his name. But yes, you'll see the bullet holes right there. Same design. And then, of course, the blood splatter and bullet holes in the back right here. I think that's pretty cool. I like the design there. All right. So this has been released as a series of trade paperbacks. It's been released as a new DC Finest, which Dom of X did an overview on the channel for, if you want to go back and check that out. And now it is out in an omnibus format. So we are going to crack this open. I'm going to talk about the stories found in here, look at this artwork, look at the back matter, and then, of course, talk about the mapping and the build of the book. But yes, in case you are wondering and you have like those old trade paperbacks, it's not even all of this collected in here. And if you're thinking, what? I'm just going to keep my trades. That's ridiculous that not all of these two are collected in there. There is so much more, and the mapping on this, oh my gosh, it is. You can't see me, but that was a chef's kiss. All right, now let's crack it open and talk about the stories found in here and how important this particular miniseries that kicks it off is to the DC Universe. Okay, let's go ahead and open this up. Black end sheets there, the title page, Suicide Squad by John Ostrander. I can't believe it's here. Ostrander Omnibus Volume 1, and some of your cast here from the very first volume. Rick Flag and Bronze Tiger and Deadshot, Captain Boomerang, Nightshade, Enchantress, and the Duchess, who has her own little secret. And then, of course, over here, adding to the roster is Amanda Waller, because without her, none of this would be possible. Actually, without these folks right here, none of this would be possible. So, of course, John Ostrander, since it is that top billing that they're giving him, it is Suicide Squad by John Ostrander, Len Wein, and Paul Cooper Berg, J.M. DeMatteis, Joe Duffy, and Keith Giffen taking also some of the writing duties. Luke McDonald doing a majority of the book, and that's mainly because he drew the issues of Suicide Squad. John Byrne, Joe Brzezowski, Eric Larson, Steve Irwin, Joe Staton, just to name a few of the other pencilers, Bob Lewis, and Carl Kessel, Sam De La Rosa, and Dave Hunt as some of the inkers, and Carl Gafford, Juliana Ferretier, Tom Zuico as some of the colors, and Todd Klein, Steve Haney, and John Costanza as some of the letters here. And table of contents. All stories written by John Ostrander, penciled by Luke McDonald, inked by Bob Lewis, colored by Carl Gafford, and lettered by Todd Klein. That's just crazy, unless otherwise noted, which they do. They note exactly who the writer was, who the plotter was, the writer, and then of course pencilers and inkers. And in here you're going to find where you're going to find them, and yes, they do have page numbers, and what the issue was actually called when it was originally released. And before that, we do have a freaking awesome foreword by none other than James Gunn, talking about how important this was, how it was so different than all the other comics out there at the time for DC Comics, especially for somebody new starting at DC. I think this is a great foreword, and the reason why we love the Suicide Squad, or why I guess people like me, my age, that grew up with this era of DC, love the Suicide Squad. And there's a beautiful introduction here by none other than John Ostrander, talking about how his idea was shot down. He wanted to write Challengers of the Unknown, and the editor was like, no, how about Suicide Squad, and you can do whatever you want to with it. And he was like, yeah, okay. One of the coolest and most interesting things about this introduction is talking about the creation of Amanda Waller, who makes her first appearance here in the Legends miniseries. So yes, Legends is collected here fully. I love that. Oh, the mapping in here. But anyway, he talks about like some of the key points to this character. It has to be a character that has no superpowers. I just hit the camera, sorry about that. It has to be a character that's a woman. It has to be a character that's middle-aged and of a certain body type. It has to be a minority because there weren't a lot of characters that were black at the time. And I think this is such an interesting way of creating a character. And I love what he says here. I wouldn't write a black character. I wrote a character who was black. And I love that, you know, at the time in the 80s and 90s, I think, you know, you would notice when a character was written and they had to be a minority and the writer had no idea how to write a particular character. And I love that because that shows the sign of a good writer, like getting deep into the psyche of this character, knowing her personally. But he got to know all his characters, and that's the beauty of this wonderful book here of Task Force X. So collected in here is Suicide Squad 1 through 18, Checkmate 1 and 8, Manhunter number 1, Justice League International number 13, Secret Origins 1428, Who's Who number 14, Detective Comics 582, The Doom Patrol and Suicide Squad Special number 1, Who's Who, the Definitive Directory of the DC Universe 3 through 8, 11 through 12, 15 through 18, 20 through 23, 25, and those are just pages, of course, that feature these characters that are playing a big, impactful part in the Suicide Squad Omni. Also in here is the new Teen Titans number 31, The Fury of Firestorm 62 through 64. In Omni format, Firestorm, The Nuclear Man Annual number 5, Who's Who, Update 1987, 1-3 through 5, Millennium number 4, Legends 1 through 6, and the Who's Who update from 1988, 1 through 4. This book has 1,064 pages and retails for $125. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and throw the spoiler tag up there because in the title of this video, I said that this is the most important, or the beginning, that's what I called it, the beginning of the DC Universe. That is true, the beginning of the DC Universe post-Crisis on Infinite Earths, because Legends is collected in here, and Legends is your very first, hey, Amanda Waller right there, already yelling at somebody. Legends is your very first crossover at DC after the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. When all the worlds ended, and Earth just became one Earth, and all the origins had to be retold, this is our first crossover where some of these characters are meeting for the first time. This also helps to create a new, look at the Justice League Detroit era right here with Vibe and Gypsy and Steel, Vixen, who plays a part in this book later on, Elongated Man, Martian Manhunter, and Firestorm right there, and of course Cosmic Boy thrown in here. So this also helps to set up new titles that will be ongoing after this. Primarily the Justice League International by Keith Giffen and J.M. DeMatteis. And then also Mike Baron's Flash title gets a kickoff during this run right here with Wally West. And you also have the Captain Marvel title, The Power of Shazam. I think it was a mini-series, though. And then, of course, Suicide Squad. And this is written or plotted by John Ostrander, and it is the dialogue's written by Len Wein, and then drawn by the phenomenal John Byrne. And the story is pretty simple. It's Darkseid saying that he can win this bet against the Phantom Stranger, as it's revealed, that humanity will turn on its heroes. So he sends Glorious Godfrey to Earth, and Godfrey uses his powers to turn people against Earth's heroes, and also sends Brimstone, this character right here, this fire elemental, to go and cause havoc. And they kind of play the game here of like framing, first of all, Captain Marvel for accidentally killing this guy. What is his name? This guy right here, Macro Man right here. When Captain Marvel is turning back to Billy, the lightning hits Macro Man and kills him. So the world is starting to turn on superheroes, eventually leading to like a mob turning on Batman and Robin, and just dogpiling on poor Jason Todd Robin that takes him to the hospital. The Justice League kind of gets disbanded here because they get their butts whooped by Brimstone, and the role that the characters of the Suicide Squad play are in issue number 3 right here, where the Suicide Squad of Enchantress and Captain Boomerang, Blockbuster, Deadshot, Bronze Tiger gets sent on a mission to go and take down Brimstone right here. It was on Mount Rushmore. And what you're going to learn immediately through this miniseries is that not every character makes it out alive from the Suicide Squad. And it helps set up who these characters are, and of course, how Amanda Waller is controlling them, getting them to do things, because she basically is promising them a new start, if you will. If these are notorious super criminals in the DC universe, so accept the highly dangerous missions and pretty much stare death in the face and earn their freedom, or just sit in a prison cell somewhere and rot forever. The other thing that is about the Suicide Squad, Task Force X, as she likes to call it, is that they are incognito. They are a black ops operation. The government doesn't know about them. The people aren't supposed to know about them. So if any of them are killed on a mission, the government or whoever's in charge will deny the fact that they were ever part of the Suicide Squad. So that's what they are, and they're formed in this Legends crossover. This Legends, like I said, the beginning of the DC universe. Or, I guess it is a really good introduction to get to know these characters if you're not familiar with them, and the status quo of them, because we've had a few reboots since then, right? Like, we've had the New 52, we've had Rebirth, and we've had a couple of soft boots for a lot of characters. But this is really where it began post-Crisis, and kind of the status quo for somebody like the Flash, right? It is Wally West right here. And Captain Boomerang even makes a crack at like, oh, you're just stepping in for that guy, the original Flash. You're not the original Flash. So by the end of this, you'll see the formation of the JLI. And yes, this is very 80s. In here, you're not just going to see real people like Ronald Reagan. You're also going to see like Mikhail Gorbachev and other political leaders at the time that are going to be showing up through here. But I do love the fact that we have a new beginning for Dr. Fate. We've got that trade coming out later. But yes, this is the beginning of the JLI right here. And who's in, who's not, who's like, you know, you can keep me as a reserve member. And then, of course, the Suicide Squad. And we kick it off with the Secret Origins issue that ties the new Suicide Squad to the classic Suicide Squad of Rick Flag's father and the Forgotten War right here against the dinosaurs on Dinosaur Island. Luke McDonald coming in now as the artist. And we actually get to meet some characters here of Rick Flag Jr.'s new team of Suicide Squad. So not just characters like Rick Flag, but also Jess Bright and Karen Grace. Oh, and what is it Dr. Hugh Evans? Those characters are also done in introduced in a series of flashbacks. Now, you get to see what ended up happening to Rick Flag's mom, what ended up happening to Rick Flag's dad, and you kind of get a little bit of, like, the man behind Rick Flag, because I think like Rick Flag is one of these characters that not a lot of writers know how to write, even in the TV show sometimes. Oh no, that was Senior in the Creature Commandos, but in the Suicide Squad, for example, like I think he's a pretty one-note character in those movies, and it's not until, and I think you can't really do it justice unless you are doing a TV show, you can't really get to know how complex of a character he is. And speaking of complexity, there's another character here, and that is Amanda Waller. Like, rereading this, I love Deadshot. Deadshot is, let's just face it, he was Wolverine when Wolverine joined the X-Men at the very beginning. You never knew what he was going to say. He was the cool guy behind the scenes, and like, very little was said, and everything he did was deadly and cool. And I also love Bronze Tiger. Enchantress became one of my favorite characters. But doing this reread, man, I love Amanda Waller. She is such a broken character. Here, she's given she's kind of giving the idea to keeping the Suicide Squad to Ronald Reagan, and which is so weird to say that, by the way. What she does is she talks a little bit about her story, and we find out that she was married and had 4 kids, and horrible things happen to her family. So her son ends up getting murdered, and he was just like a rising basketball star and just said the wrong thing to the wrong guy. Her daughter ends up getting raped by this guy, and then her husband goes out and kills this. Not only does he rape her, he kills her too. He kills her daughter. And her husband goes out and kills this guy that did that to her, their daughter, and ends up getting killed in the process. And she swears like she is never going to let another family member die. And she rises in the status quo of like the political movement and what she does to get votes, and eventually gets to have this position. It's a very, very tragic character, and a deeper understanding of who she is reading this before you even start reading the Suicide Squad. And that alone, gets you hooked into what this story is about. It's a group of villains that no one cares about. Hell, they don't even care about themselves. And they're on these missions, whether it's a mission overseas, like an international mission, or it's a domestic side of things, or maybe even like a secret hush-hush, super hush-hush that other team members don't know about. I'm going to say one more thing, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the stories in here. Every time I do an overview of something like this, or one of my favorite books, like Peter David's Hulk, or Thor by Walter Simonson, or even Chris Claremont's X-Men, or John Byrne's Superman, or John Byrne's Fantastic Four. It's so difficult to hype something up when you have a little bit of a slow start, and people, whenever they read something, they're like, it just wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't like it. It was boring. And I think that's what happens with a lot of these great stories. Like people hype them up online. I'm sure I'm not the only one that you've heard talk about Suicide Squad. And what ends up happening is you build up expectations in your head. So when you actually read it, you're like, oh, this is kind of boring. I don't get it. It's not until you get to a certain issue, and I think it works for everybody this way, whether you're reading Peter David's Hulk, or whether you're reading Man of Steel by Superman, or Man of Steel by John Byrne. Don't let him know I called him Superman, please. Fantastic Four by John Byrne, or Chris Claremont's X-Men. It's not until you get to one issue that you're like, oh, now I see what everybody's talking about. So I'm going to say, if you don't get to, if you're not hooked by issue 8, if you read issue 8, maybe Suicide Squad is not for you. So I will say that, because having reread this, just finishing it up this morning, I forgot about all these awesome things that don't happen until issue 8. So it's a slow burn. At first, they go on these Mission Impossible. Actually, there is like a breakdown, kind of like a Mission Impossible style breakdown of, here are the bad guys. This is the jihad. This is who you're after. And you're going to go in and pretty much quietly take these guys out, because we don't want the government finding out. So in here goes a team of Rick Flag, Plastic, Mindboggler, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot, and Bronze Tiger. And in this first mission, there's already a death and betrayal, and there's twists and turns in here. So it gives you an idea of what's to come. It's still Ostrander getting used to writing these characters, and also, finding out what makes them tick. But you're along with him for this wild ride. And I have to say, the artwork here by Luke McDonald, like, it is so awesome. Like, It reminds me a lot of his work, of course, in Iron Man, which is the other big book that I know him from. But it works for a story like this. It's not over detailed. The panels are easy to follow, especially during fight sequences. I love this issue right here. Issue number 3 is where Darkseid sends in the female Furies to go and get the character of Glorious Godfrey out of this jail cell that the Suicide Squad have him in. So there's a break-in by these by these female characters, and what ends up happening is that Rick Flag contacts the members of Suicide Squad and is like, hey, we need everybody here, we've got superpowered invaders. And he gets a hold of Floyd Lawson, Deadshot, and he's like, hey, we need you at the center now. And he's like, why? It's like, because people are breaking into Bel Rev, which is where their base of operations is. And he's like, so? And you know, this is a character that it has no problem shooting people, and he's vicious. But he's like, look, they don't pay me to do that. You know, I go out on missions. Security ain't part of the deal. So he just takes this coin and breaks the TV screen. That's the kind of character you're dealing with. See what I mean? Like that Wolverine 70s, like first joining the X-Men. You don't know if he's like all the way good. But then he starts growing on you, especially when you get to the Deadshot miniseries, which I assume is going to kick off Volume 2. This is the story of William. Is it William Hell, I think is his name? He is a racist superhero that is only fighting minorities. And the Suicide Squad finds out about this. And one thing you're going to note, too, is different members will be playing different roles. Like, you still have the character of the Enchantress on the team and Bronze Tiger. Bronze Tiger and usually Rick Flag are the two big characters that stay on the team. And they go and take them out. We have the issues here. Oh, man, this is so freaking cool that they collected this in its entirety. Like, not just parts of it, but Firestorm. So Firestorm is both Ronnie Raymond and Professor Martin Stein living together in one body when they become a superhero of Firestorm. And this is pretty much, yes, right here. It's the Firestorm, the nuclear man, saying no nukes. So he is fighting a war against nuclear weapons. Of course, the president gets involved, and then that's when the Suicide Squad will get involved. Captain Atom, there's a rematch there. And this time around, it's Killer Frost, the Parasite. Firehawk makes an appearance. But she was a supporting cast of Firestorm at the time. But yes, he gets to fight against these characters right here of the Suicide Squad. Again, different members of the team that were not established earlier, like in the first few issues. So you have the character, as I mentioned, Parasite and Killer Frost, and then Slipknot, and then, what is the other guy's name? Multiplex. The Justice League gets involved. So at this time, the Justice League, Batman, nobody really knows about Task Force X. Nobody really knows about this secret group that they have. But it's coming. This is the Mission to Moscow. Mission to Moscow story is so ahead of its time. So during this time, what is it? This is 87, 80. By this point, I think it's 88. So the Cold War threats, that kind of died down because, you know, Rocky 1 and Rocky 5, so the Cold War was over. No, in all seriousness, it seems pretty interesting that they were writing stories like this, because this story is about this character named Soya Trigorin, who is a Russian author, and she was imprisoned by the Soviet state for publishing this one book. It's called Firebird, which is what the storyline is. And what ends up happening is the Suicide Squad goes to break her out of the Soviet custody. And they have to fight other superheroes there from the Soviet... or actually, they have to fight other superheroes in Russia. Who gets involved is Oswald Cobblepot. So it's the character of the Penguin. They get him to join the squad for this mission to go undercover. Now, they also end up rescuing Nemesis. So this is the issue right here I was talking about. And another thing I haven't mentioned about the Suicide Squad is that they have a supporting cast of not just Amanda Waller as the human being, but also a normal human being like Professor Simon LeGrieve, who is the resident psychiatric doctor. So he's the one that's giving them the personal file. So this gives you a psychic evaluation of these members of the team. Oh, this is where we are introduced to Mark Shaw, who is going as the privateer. Later on, he'll come back as somebody else. There's also the character of Marnie Hers, who's the assistant to the professor, and she starts developing feelings for one of the characters. Anyway, all this drama. But in here, you get to find out, like, in small dosages, what makes these characters tick. And this is the issue where you find out, like, Rick Flag is a really complicated character because he's a good guy that happens to be working with these horrible people. Like, he doesn't believe that these good guys these villains can turn into good guys sometimes. He's just making sure he's there doing his job. So if you think of like Captain America in the Silver Age, when he just woke up and he's facing America as a man out of time, it's almost the way that Rick Flag is written through here, dealing with all of these villains and just doing his job and not realizing that the world is going to look at him different, because it happens in issue number 8. All right, Millennium, this is just parts of Millennium. So it's issue number 4, where it's basically what happens in Millennium is that we are infiltrated by these manhunters, which is a group of these robotic cults that were created before the Green Lanterns, and it was the Guardians of the Galaxy. So that's where the Manhunters, Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians of the Universe, that's where the Manhunters came from. So there's a lot of sleeper agents that are waking up, and some of them new, but it is continued into issue number 9, which is a very important issue because there's a big revelation here that happens that leads into the next issue. And there is a character, and a very important character death that crosses over into the pages of Detective Comics, and that's when Batman gets involved, when he finds out about this right here, the Suicide Squad. I can't show you what's on this page, but I love that cover. Also happens to be John Ostrander's favorite cover. And this is when Batman actually breaks into the headquarters to see what exactly is going on and faces these characters. Like the Duchess here, by now she's one of the main characters, and faces Amanda Waller. And this is when you get the character of Rick Flag actually standing up for Batman and saying, you know, he's worth more than 10 of you creeps. And it just shows you the complexity behind it. Like, he looks up to Batman and realizes he has to fight Batman because of his job, and he's just trying to do the right thing. That's what I like about this book. There's so much complexity, and you don't really get that until you get to the later issues. So if you're enjoying it by, like, you know, the first part of the book, oh man, you're going to have so much fun with this. This is the special right here with the Doom Patrol. And in this particular story, after the big fight in Belle Reve prison, Amanda Waller sends a team of Thinker and Psy and Weasel and Mr. 104 to go and dispose of this threat that's about to expose Task Force X. So this is when that crossover, or I guess the special with the Doom Patrol happened. So they're drawn into conflict with Doom Patrol when they're out to rescue this particular character from DC Comics, which I'm sure you saw there. And this is drawn by Eric Larson, who was doing issues of the Bronze Age Doom Patrol. And then we have the story of Vixen coming into play here, where some of her friends get murdered, so she wants revenge. Black Orchid ends up joining them. So you're going to see a lot of characters come and go through here. And this is Checkmate number 1. Checkmate is another part of Task Force X. And again, it's Amanda Waller kind of playing both sides. This is the crossover with the Justice League. I love this crossover because this was collected in the trade paperbacks. The covers are that angle right there. And then when you get to the Suicide Squad, here we go. That Suicide Squad cover, you get it from this perspective. So they're from like 2 different angles. You get it from the side here, from the Suicide Squad's angle, and then you get it from the Justice League International's angle right here. And it is a crossover because they're having to deal with, again, Russia. And this time around, you have characters like Javelin that ends up joining them, fighting Booster Gold, and Booster Gold's making fun of his weapon. This is the Manhunter issue, and behind the mask is somebody that we had already met earlier on in the pages of Suicide Squad. This is the Secret Files right here by Robert Greenberg and Rob Liefeld. Manhunter, by the way, I do have to say, is co-created by John Ostrander's then wife, Kim Yale. And there's a tribute, a beautiful tribute to her towards the end of the book. And this is a princess story. This made me a fan of the character of Nightshade. Like, I like the Enchantress, and there's a complexity to Nightshade that starts here with her childhood story and continues into the next event, which is, I think it's called the Nightshade Odyssey, where this character known as Insidious comes into play and takes them into the Nightshade world, if you will. And there are Insidious? No, Incubus. Sorry, I was thinking about the movie. Incubus and Succubus, because there's a little bit of twists and turns there. This will change the character of Nightshade, and even in the way that she looks, like when she ends up going and helping out the team during the return of the Jihad here in the city. So this is like Manhattan, and this is the way she looks here. That's her character design there. And then you get checkmate number 8, which is Amanda Waller going after Blackthorn. And then your who's who back here is the directory. Who these characters are, where they first appeared, their aliases. I recommend not looking back here because this will spoil who ends up dying and what their current status is. But it is really cool that it's all collected back here. We get a little bit of the events here in the beginning and unredacted history of the Suicide Squad. The cover here for the trade paperback, because this was available. So I talked about these two trades, and I should have said, yeah, it's also Legends has been collected in trade paperback. Now it's Omni format, baby. We don't need to have that anymore. Anyway, what was I saying? This is really cool. Some of the stuff I've seen before, but this is new. It is a retrospective on Legends, and it is some of the letter pages, but not quite letter pages. The last pages of the issues are collected in here for issues 1 and 2 of Legends. But the retrospective on Secret Origins, these retrospectives by John Ostrander are amazing. Like, I've read and reread so much of Suicide Squad over the years. And I only read a few of the stories here, especially the ones that haven't been collected in oversized format, like the Firestorm issues. I didn't reread the whole thing before this overview. I just kind of went over some of the books that I hadn't read before or haven't read in a long time, like Checkmate. But I've never read the retro. These are all new. This is new back matter. So I've never had a chance to read these retrospectives on. There's a script right here, the pitch. But it's really cool to see a writer or artist go back and talk about these stories, because I know what they mean to me. So this is how I found out that he loves that cover. John Ostrander loves that cover. And it's not a breakdown, it's not a retrospective on every single issue collected in here, but a lot of it is in here, including how much Manhunter means to him, because he co-created it with his wife at the time. And then, yeah, Suicide Squad, they're 16, 13. And then remembering Kimberly Yale, who we lost at a really young age. And it's a beautiful tribute right here. And talking about just her importance and her importance, not just in comics, but also like women in comics and characters, like female characters in comics, and how important that was to her. But it's a beautiful tribute. All right, let's look at the binding. 1,064 pages, sewn binding and printed in this glossy paper stock. Not as thick as it used to be, but still not bad on the bleed through. And the binding was actually just a little bit tighter than some of the other Omnis that have come out recently, so I did have to stretch the spine quite a little, about 4 times. But let's actually look at the way that it lays over. Let's go to this page right here. Oh, by Larson. So you can see just the minimal gutter loss that is happening here, like on Weasel's face. And a little bit of Robot Man's leg right there. But that is it. That, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing this omnibus, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content, the page count, and build of this Omni. Let me know in the comments down below if you picked this up, or if you already have the trades, if you're just going to go the DC Finest route, or if this is one of your most anticipated Omnis and you just could not wait to get your hands on it. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.